Good morning and welcome to the Rules Committee of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors for today, Monday, April 4th, 2022. I am the chair of the committee, Aaron Peskin, joined by vice chair to my right, Supervisor Raphael Mandelman, and by committee member Supervisor Connie Chan to my left. Our clerk is Mr. Victor Young.
Yes, next on the agenda is a hearing to consider appointing one member, term ending April 30th, 2026, to the Police Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Colleagues, we had quite a time with our last vacancy in filling it. That was the seat formerly held by Petra de Jesus. This time we are getting a jump on it and potentially filling it even before the expiration of the seat number 2, which is currently held by Commissioner John Hamasaki, which expires at the end of this month. We have 4 applicants before us. Mr. Rizek has withdrawn. We actually, you'll recall, colleagues, heard from him relative to the last seat. So with that, why don't we interview the 4 applicants that are before us in the order that they appear on our agenda, starting with Kevin Michael Benedicto. Supervisor Chan.
Thank you, Chair Preskin. Just so that just save us time, I would like for all the applicants in their remarks answering the same question that I have for all of them, is that, given just the recent development with the police department, please do include your answer to this question is, what is your view on Chief Scott ending the MOU for investigations with the District Attorney's Office, and specifically what role should the commission play in this process? Please do include this include your answer to these questions in your remarks. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Benedicto. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Peskin, Vice Chair Chan, Supervisor Mandelman. It is an honor to appear before this committee and be considered for this appointment. As a longtime advocate for criminal justice reform and police reform in San Francisco, I know that the Police Commission can be a powerful force for advancing those causes, and I want to be a part of that critical work. I've worked with SFPD on police reform issues since 2015 as pro bono counsel to the Blue Ribbon Panel on Transparency, Accountability, and Fairness in Law Enforcement, and since then as a member of the Bar Association of San Francisco Criminal Justice Task Force. I helped revise SFPD's use of force policy adopted in 2016, which I believe is still one of the best use of force policies in the country. I've attended more than 50 Police Commission meetings and testified both as an invited witness and as a member of the public on behalf of the Bar Association. I've also served on several SFPD working groups to provide input on topics including bias, use of force, community policing, and others. I've worked closely with numerous commissioners on their work, including former Commissioners Loftus, Huang, Mizuko, De Jesus, and others. I've also worked on police reform issues with SFPD command staff, including former Chief Sir, former Acting Chief Chaplain, and Chief Scott. On behalf of the Bar Association, I worked with Supervisor Yee on Proposition E in 2020, advising its addition to the ballot, where it would pass overwhelmingly and with unanimous support of the board. I've also advised and worked with law enforcement agencies across the country on incident review and reform proposals. I've received recognition for my criminal justice work and my broader pro bono practice. I'm a proud member of the AAPI community in San Francisco, and last year I was awarded the Joe Morizumi Exceptional Legal Advocacy Award by the Asian American Bar Association, one of the organization's most prestigious awards, and named after one of the first and finest Asian American trial lawyers in the Bay Area. I've also received the Bar Association of San Francisco Award of Merit, and was selected by the San Francisco Superior Court to serve on its Committee on Elimination of Bias. I'm an experienced civil litigator, have worked as a civil rights lawyer, and am familiar with the specific issues confronting the Police Commission. If appointed, I will be able to hit the ground running, get up to speed quickly, and do my part to allow the Commission to provide effective, pragmatic, and progressive oversight and direction to the San Francisco Police Department. And to address your question, Supervisor Vice Chair Chan, it was very disappointing to learn when when the chief pulled out of the MOU. As pro bono counsel to the Blue Ribbon Task Force, we worked closely and very strongly supported the MOU going into place. I was glad to see there was a short extension reached as the parties continued to negotiate, but I think that if appointed to the commission and that if that issue were still open, I think the commission should work strongly to ensure that an MOU remains in place, because what that MOU allowed, which is independent oversight, independent investigations from the DA unit, I think is a significant piece of the progress San Francisco made on police reform. I would like to see that preserved.
Thank you, Mr. Benedicto. Supervisor Mandelman.
Thank you, Chair Peskin, and thank you, Mr. Benedicto, for putting your name in. You are liked and respected by people who I like and respect, and I'm encouraged to see you applying. I want to publicly have some of the conversation that we had privately and just sort of talk through some of these issues. I have no doubt about your passion for and capacity for pursuing criminal justice, police reform, and for the that you will push to finish the work of implementing the Department of Justice recommendations and taking additional steps that the department should be taking to become a better police department and to serve all of our communities. I have a concern about another issue with the police department, actually several other issues, but one that is leading in my mind right now is the difficulty the San Francisco Police Department is having in attracting and retaining police officers. I went to a graduation of one of the academies that I had urged the Board of Supervisors to fund in our last budget cycle, but that academy class that was graduating had 13 people in it, 12 of whom were going to become San Francisco police officers. There is, as I understand it, a group of officers who were hired in the 90s as part of Joe Biden and Bill Clinton's efforts to expand local police departments. They're getting to the point where they can think about retiring, and many of them are. Is this something the Police Commission should be concerned about? And do you, as a potential commissioner, have concerns or thoughts about how the San Francisco Police Department can attract and retain high-quality officers?
Thank you for the question, Supervisor Mandelman. I do think it's an issue that the Police Commission should be concerned about, and as a commissioner, I would be concerned. I would certainly be concerned with it. I would like to point out two things at the outset. One is that the smaller academy class and the current staffing levels are not something that should be viewed in isolation. We're all aware that there are broader labor issues that are affecting private and public sector employers right now, and so I think it's important to see issues in the broader context, since staffing at the police department is no different than companies hiring across the economy in the public and private sector. I also think that the issues that you identified my experience with in reform are not necessarily separate from the staffing issues. I think that there is, across many communities in San Francisco, a deficit of trust between the communities and the department. I think there are morale issues within the department that result from some setbacks and some of the positive reform efforts. And I think that as progress is made on repairing that deficit of trust, for example, there is a very ambitious community policing plan that the SFPD, that I served on a working group, helped almost finalize, but is yet to be fully enacted as a new strategic plan. I think that as those things, as that deficit in trust can shrink, as community policing, as other efforts that would hopefully bridge that, you would see that reflected in community members that want to become police officers as well. So I think that there's a long-term unity and purpose between those two efforts. I think in the short to medium term, whether it's adjusting salaries or increased recruitment drives or other policy measures that can be taken at the board level and the policymaker level, I think are important as well.
You mentioned morale within the department, and I don't know what kind of efforts there have been to measure morale or the perceptions of officers, but my sense is that many officers in the San Francisco Police Department don't feel like the city has their back, meaning police commission, board of supervisors, maybe the mayor, but just in general, this entity that they work for, some of them, maybe a lot of them, don't feel supports them. And I guess I'm curious for you as a police commissioner, or a potential police commissioner, how you balance or think about balancing your role as someone who needs to hold individual officers accountable for their misdeeds, change policies to make the San Francisco Police Department engage with communities in a better way, and also have officers feel like the city has their back? Or is that not important?
I think it is important, and I think that the commission has, as you stated, a very difficult balancing act of the policymaking duty, the adjudicatory duty, and the fact that it sits atop the command structure. I think that the most effective commissioners have been those that are able to push reform forward and do a good job explaining to the department that it's not something that's happening in opposition to them, and that it's something we want the department to work in partnership with the commission on these efforts. I think I would try to model, I know that President Tuzi Loftus and Commissioner Victor Huang during their tenure, that was some of the most progress we've made in San Francisco on police reform, and also a time where a lot of those commissioners were able to connect with both command staff and with officers. And so I think it's important that the department, and particularly the command staff and rank and file officers, see themselves as partners in the reform process and not as reform being forced on them. And that can be done in some ways through better communication. Sometimes what the commission does is filtered through whether it's communications from the Police Officer Association or other methods. They're trying to break through that to communicate with officers. I also think some of that is visibility and accessibility. I think that officers and the public shouldn't just see the commission as meeting down the hall once a week. I know that under President Loftus, a few times the commission would have meetings in neighborhoods. We had one in San Francisco City College. That there was a meeting coordinated with the Cheryl Davis Human Rights Commission in the Bayview. And I think having the commission work in the community is I think, helpful. I think attending community boards, being present, doing ride-alongs. If I was a commissioner, I would even try to have office hours where whether members of the public or officers that are off duty could raise concerns, whether that be virtual or in person, because I think the public and the department should see the commission as advocating for them for better policing in San Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Benedicto. If we have any other questions, we'll let you know. Appreciate your applying. And why don't we move on to Catherine Hodge?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, then public comment is closed, and the matter is in the hands of the panel. Colleagues, this is a quite important position and appointment, and I'd love to hear any comments that you colleagues have to make. Supervisor Mandelman.
Thank you, Chair Peskin. I am going to support Kevin Benedicto today. As I said, I think his commitment to reform is clear, and he has a history of doing that. I think the answer. I asked him similar questions when we spoke last week, and I do have great concern around staffing levels in the department, around whether being a San Francisco police officer is something that is appealing to folks who we want it to be appealing to, and I think that we as a city have work to do to demonstrate that we're going to move towards progressive policing, and we're also going to support our officers, and we want officers from diverse backgrounds joining our department. I think Mr. Benedicto gets that, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. And I hope that I trust that he will be an excellent commissioner who both holds the department accountable and also supports the department and tries to make San Francisco a place where people want to be police.
I appreciate your statements and concur. Supervisor Chan.
Thank you, Chair Peskin, and I concur with both of you, and definitely, Vice Chair Mandelman's comments on this, and on Mr. Benedicto. And I do want to say, though, I want to thank Ms. Hodge for her application. And in this case, for this seat as Police Commission, which is a very critical seat, that we definitely want to see someone who has a long, an extensive body of work in the field. And so the reason why I want to single out Ms. Hodge for her application in this is because as a member of this Rules Committee, I am aware that for this, for our appointments process on this, specifically on this commission, we have been consistently been appointing, if I may say, with all due respect, colleagues, male commissioners to the commission in the last few consecutive appointments for this body. I really look forward to seeing more women candidates coming forward, especially for this body, knowing that now Commission President Malia Cohen has stepped down, and really her leadership was tremendously critical to that commission, given her work as former supervisor, establishing accountability office for the police department. And so we really love to see, in the event, we have a future opportunity to see really qualified candidate who deep in the trenches of this work on law enforcement and criminal justice reform issues that we could hopefully, and I'm sure they gotta be, identify women candidates to come forward to be part of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Chan, and I appreciate and concur with that statement as well. It sounds like the will of this committee, and thank you to the other applicants, is to move Mr. Benedicto forward to the full board with recommendation, and to that end, I will make the same amendments. No, actually, that's not. We don't have to make amendments.
No, we do not.
I'm sorry. We will forward Mr. Benedicto to the full board with recommendation. On that motion, a roll call, please.
Yes, Supervisor Chan. Aye. Chan, aye. Vice Chair Mandelman. Mandelman, aye. Chair Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. The motion passes without objection.
Thank you again, and would you please read the third and final item?